We are reading about the experiences of King Asvapati as through his inner growth and development he is able to come in contact with the subtle worlds. An aspect of the unknown reality altered the meaning of the cosmic scene. This huge material universe became a small result of a stupendous force, overtaking the moment. The eternal ray illumined that which never yet was made. Thought lay down in a mighty voicelessness. The toiling thinker widened and grew still. Wisdom transcendent touched his quivering heart. His soul could sail beyond thought's luminous bar. Mind screened no more the shoreless infinite. Across a void, retreating sky, he glimpsed through a last glimmer and drift of vanishing stars, the superconscient realms of motionless peace, where judgment ceases and the word is mute, and the unconceived lies pathless and alone. There came not form or any mounting voice. There only were silence and the absolute. Out of that stillness, mind newborn arose and woke to truths once inexpressible, and forms appeared dumbly significant, a seeing thought, a self-revealing voice. He knew the source from which his spirit came. Movement was married to the immobile vast. He plunged his roots into the infinite. He based his life upon eternity. What we read last week and what I've just read now are the things that happened, the experiences that Asvapati had when occasionally his spirit could soar into a signless region, packed with the deep contents of formlessness. So there his soul stood free, a witness and a king, and he's no longer absorbed in the flow of time. So these new revelations could come to him. You would read, Bhavana?
Yes. An aspect of the unknown reality altered the meaning of the cosmic scene. This huge material universe became a small result of a stupendous force, overtaking the moment the eternal ray illumined that which never it was made.
Yes. So he revealed to him is an aspect. Sri Aurobindo doesn't describe this aspect itself, the aspect of the unknown reality, but he describes the effect that the revelation of that aspect has upon Asvapati. For him, it altered the meaning of the cosmic scene, of this vast material universe. Its whole meaning changed. He sees this huge material universe as a small result of a stupendous force. He's become aware of the infinite, supreme, conscious force, and he sees that this material manifestation is just a small result of that stupendous force. And the consciousness that goes with that force and consciousness always go together. So for him, it's as if like a searchlight, this eternal ray of consciousness, it no longer fixes just on the moment, overtaking the moment. That eternal ray lit up that which never yet was made. All kinds of things that have not yet been manifested, things of the future. No? That's where we stopped, where you stopped, Bhavana?
Yes.
Yes. Martin?
Thought lay down in a mighty voicelessness. The toiling finger widened and grew still. Wisdom transcendent touched his quivering heart. His soul could sail beyond thought's luminous bound. Mind screamed no more, the shoreless infinite.
Mm. This wonderful experience when the thought just stops, lies down, no more that voice turning in the head. Thought lay down in a mighty voicelessness. And the mind, this toiling thinker, always at work, running like a machine that can't stop. The mind widens and grows still, absolutely calm and silent. Then in that silence, wisdom transcendent, the supreme wisdom, can touch Asvapati's heart. This transcendent wisdom is an aspect of the mother. No? And his soul, it's as if his soul has been like a ship, a small ship in a harbor, and it's able to move out from the harbor. The bar, it's the mouth of the harbor. When the ship sails out from those protecting walls or cliffs of the harbor, it sails beyond the bar into the open ocean. So there's been a bar. It's a luminous barrier at the opening of the harbor of individuality, perhaps. Now his soul could sail out beyond that bar, out into the limitless ocean. And for him, mind screened no more the shoreless infinite, the infinite ocean, which doesn't have any shores, boundaries limiting it.
But the thought is beyond the mind.
The thought is beyond the mind. He refers to the mind when he says the toiling thinker. When the thought stops, then the mind also stops. No? And now, when wisdom transcendent touches his heart, then there's no more mind, there's no more screen. No? He can experience the shoreless infinite.
The mind is screening here. The mind screen.
Yeah, for us, we don't perceive the shoreless infinite. No? We can't even begin to imagine it. It's our mind, our limiting mind. Actually, limiting is the function of mind. We have to pass beyond mind in order to widen into shoreless knowledge. Our mind, even the highest forms of mind, make distinctions, create divisions, create oppositions. That is why we have to have these high experiences. It's necessary to go beyond mind. So for him, the mind has become absolutely silent and still. It's no longer presenting any screen through which knowledge must pass. He can have a direct perception of the shoreless infinite. So, Poo, you read?
Across a wide, retreating sky he views, through a lost glimmer and drift of vanishing stars, that superconscient realm of motionless peace, where judgment ceases and the world is mute, and the unconceived life, pathless and alone.
Yes. So when there's no more screen, it's as if he's seeing an empty sky that's stretching and stretching further and further and further. And in that sky, Sri Aurobindo gives such a beautiful picture, as if the stars are vanishing, they're moving away. A last glimmer and drift of vanishing stars. Such a beautiful image. Sri Aurobindo has taken this image from the Sanskrit poet Kalidasa. He has used this about the morning light. When the dawn comes, then the stars vanish. A last glimmer and drift of vanishing stars. So beyond that sky, that shoreless infinite, he could glimpse, he could just get a short partial vision of the superconscient realms of motionless peace, the absolute peace of the Supreme, without movement. That is superconscient to us, beyond the reaches of our consciousness. In those realms of superconscient peace, judgment ceases. Judgment is an action of the mind. No? It decides this is good and that is bad, and I like this and I don't like that. There's nothing like that anymore. And the word, he doesn't put a capital W and a small w. The speech, the word, is silent. In those realms of superconscient peace, the unconceived lies pathless and alone. Unconceived, what has never been seized by mind, by conception. And it's with a capital U. This unconceived maybe never will be conceived, never will be grasped by the mind. He gets a glimpse of those superconscient realms of everlasting, of, motionless peace. Chandra.
There came not cloud or any mountain noise. There only were silence and the absolute. Or out of that stillness mind, billboard follows and walk through truths once inexpressible, and forms appear doubly significant. The same thought, the self-revealing voice.
Yes. So in those realms of motionless peace, there's no form at all. There's no voice coming up, no prayer. It's completely silent. There only were silence, absolute silence. And the absolute. All that we know here in this universe is relative. Everything is relative to everything else. We hardly have the experience of what is absolute. He experiences that silence for a while, and then out of that stillness, his mind is as if newborn. He says arose, as if it has been in a bath or bathed in that ocean of motionless peace. And now it comes up to the surface again, and it's as if it's been born completely new. The mind woke up to truths that were once inexpressible, that couldn't be grasped by mind or expressed in any way. And again, the forms come back. And those forms, they don't speak, but they are full of significance, dumbly significant. He's experiencing a seeing thought, not a toiling thought, but a thought that sees, and a self-revealing voice, something that speaks and expresses itself fully. Dhanalakshmi.
He knew the source from which his spirit came. Movement was married to the immobile past. He planted his roots into the eternal. He based his life upon eternity.
Well, this is obviously a very important experience that he has. He becomes aware of the source from which his spirit has come incarnated here in the material world. And by that knowledge, he sees the connection of all the movement that we experience and ourselves participate in here in the universe, its connection, how it is married, how it's connected to the unmoving vastness which is supporting all this. So like a plant that's put into some very rich soil, he plunged his roots into that infinity. That's where he comes from. That's where he draws his nourishment from. He based his life upon eternity. He knows that's the basis, and he will live on that basis. A very great realization. You'll read, Joel?
Only a while at first, these heavenlier states, these large, wide, poised, upliftings could endure. The high and luminous tension breaks too soon. The body's stone stillness and the life's hushed trance, the breathless might and calm of silent mind, or slowly they fail as sets a golden day.
Yes. So Aswapati is still at the beginning of his spiritual growth. He's already reached quite a high level, but it's not yet fully established. So as we may experience, for a while, only these heavenly estates could only last for a little while. They were not permanent. They would come, he'd experience them, and then they would break. These large, wide, poised upliftings, as if he flies up on great wings above the normal consciousness. They can endure, they can last for a short time. But that high and luminous tension breaks too soon. It is some kind of tension for the being, and it can't remain like that. It breaks. The body may have been still like a stone, and the life in a silent state of trance. The silent mind, breathless might and calm of silent mind. Either this tension breaks, or they just fade away like a golden sunset. Slowly they fail as sets a golden day. Perhaps we can have an experience like this in the Matrimandiya chamber. That we come into some silent, still, concentrated state of some wide uplifting. And then maybe there's a noise, the concentration breaks, or it just fades away. Why does that happen? Now he's going to explain why it happens. Mihong.
The restless nether members high of peace, a nostalgia of all the little works and joys, a need to call back small familiar selves, to tread the accustomed and inferior way, the need to rest in a natural pose of fall. As a child who learns to walk can walk not long, replace the tightened will forever to climb on the heart altar being the sacred fire.
So these are the reasons why these heavenly estates can't last long at first. The restless nether members, the body the lower vital, they get tired of that peace. They begin to remember and long for all little works and joys, all the ordinary things. And they feel a need to call back and experience again their familiar selves, what they're used to, the ordinary, to tread the accustomed ways, even though those accustomed ways are inferior, they are less valuable, they are less powerful even. There's a need in the being to rest in a natural pose of fall. All of us experience this every 24 hours. There comes a time when we need to lie down and rest. And this is like a little child. When he's learning to walk, he can't walk for long, no? So all those things, those needs of the restless nether members, they replace that Titan will to forever climb, to go on. King Aswapati has a very, very powerful will and a very, very powerful flame of aspiration. But it can't sustain itself because there are other parts of the being. So that Titan will forever to climb gets replaced by this need to rest. And on the altar of the heart, that flame, sacred flame, dies down. Leela.
An old pool of subconscious chords renews. It draws the unwilling spirit from the heights, or as our gravitation drag us down to the blind, driven inertia of our base.
Yes. So there are things tying us to our subconscious, to the inconscient. And when we've flown high for long enough, those cords pull us down. An old pull of subconscious cords renews, it comes back and asserts itself. Come on, come down. It draws the unwilling spirit. The spirit would like to stay on the heights, but no, these cords are dragging it down. Or it may be not the cords, not the attachments. It may be just the gravitation, the pull of earth that drags us down to the blind, driven inertia of our base, our material foundation. We get pulled down to that base again. That sounds quite negative, but what Sri Aurobindo is going to say is very, very interesting. Deven.
This too, the supreme diplomat can do. He makes our fall a means for greater rise. For into ignorant nature's dusty field, into the half-ordered chaos of mortal life, the formless power, the self of eternal light, follow in the shadow of spirit's descent. The twin duality, forever one, chooses its home mid the tumults of the sense.
Yes, thank you. So this has to happen until the being has been totally transformed. But the supreme diplomat, the Lord, he makes use of all circumstances. That's what diplomats have to do. He makes our fall a means for greater rise. a way to help us to rise higher. And Sri Aurobindo explains how it happens. It happens because when we fall like that, we return to the blind, driven inertia of our base. The formless power, the self of eternal light from the higher levels, it follows, it comes down in the shadow of the Spirit's descent. And that twin duality, that consciousness force that's always one, chooses its home amid the tumults of the sense, here in our material life, which is dominated by the senses, all that confusion of sense impressions. It comes down. Kamala.
He comes unseen into our darker parts, and curtained by the darkness does his work. A subtle and all unknowing guest and guide, till they too feel the need and will to change.
So this is what is so wonderful. We have these special experiences, we rise higher, we come back to our normal state, but something of those higher experiences comes with it and into our ordinary lower levels and influences them until they too feel the need and the will to change. He's curtained by the darkness of our unconsciousness. He does his work inside us without us noticing that it's happening. But from within, his presence is a subtle and all-knowing guest and guide. He helps us on the way. Unseen in our darker parts, where there's less light, less consciousness. You will read, please.
All here must learn to obey a higher law. Our body cells must hold the immortal's flame. Else would the spirit reach alone its source, leaving a half-saved world to its dubious fate. Nature would ever labor unredeemed. Our earth would ever spin unhelped in space. And this immense creation's purpose fail, till at last the frustrate universe sank undone.
Yes. Everything here must learn to obey the law of the higher consciousness. Even the cells of our body must learn to contain the flame of the immortal being. The very substance has to be transformed. If that's not done, then the spirit alone can reach its source, leaving the half-saved world to its dubious fate, its doubtful fate. Sri Aurobindo says this has happened too much in the past, that the highly developed spirits, they have been content to reach alone the source, and they haven't felt it necessary. They didn't believe it was possible to transform the life and the body. So the world has been left to its dubious fate. So his hope was that more and more spirits, developing spirits, would recognize the need to lift up the lower parts. nature would just go on working, unredeemed, unsaved, and our earth would ever spin unhelped in space. And then that would mean that the whole purpose of this creation would fail. So, if the purpose, it's seen that it has failed and it's going to fail and it can't help failing, then this frustrate universe that's unable to fulfill its purpose would just dissolve, sink, undone. The only thing that can prevent that is the transformation of all the parts of the being to the most material. Sarojini.
When his God-like strength to age must fail, his greater consciousness will grow behind. Aim and sleep his human side stroke to heal again the old subtleties. Bring down high saving touch. The
Ethereal.
Flame got back to its right need to divine force.
Yes. So even Aswapati, he had so much godlike strength, but in order to rise higher, it must also fall back. So that's why these heavenly estates only lasted for a while, for him too. His greater consciousness withdrew behind, and then he's left with his human outside that's dim, eclipsed. The light of the inner sun is hidden. But the human outside feels that difference and it tries hard to feel again those sublimities, those sublime, uplifted states. It wants to bring back again that high, saving touch, that ethereal flame. Ether, it's the subtlest form of the subtlest element, we can say. The flame of ether is something extremely subtle and pure. So the human outside of Aswapati wanted to call back. It feels this terrible need for those higher states. It wants to call back the divine force. Alice.
Always the power poured back like sudden rain, or slowly in his breast a presence grew. It clambered back to some remembered height, or soared above the peak from which it fell.
So that power always comes back. Sometimes it pours down like golden rain. Or it may be that in his heart, in his breast, he feels that divine presence growing. And his consciousness could, with difficulty, is climbing with difficulty, up to some level which he remembered having reached before. Or sometimes he could just soar up above that place, that level, from which he had fallen down. Ganga Lakshmi.
Each time he rose, there was a larger voice. The feeling of an higher spirit ready. So light in man within the longer space.
Yes, space. So each time he rose, there was a poise, a larger poise. A poise is a position which you can hold because you are balanced. No? There was a larger poise. He could dwell on a higher spirit plane, and the light remained in him for a longer space, a longer time. No? I'll read the next sentence. In this oscillation between earth and heaven, in this ineffable communion's climb, there grew in him, as grows a waxing moon, the glory of the integer of his soul. So through this oscillation is what a pendulum does. It moves backwards and forwards. This is a vertical oscillation between earth and heaven, heaven and earth, earth and heaven. In this oscillation between earth and heaven, that leads to a climb, a mounting up, an ineffable communion's climb. There's some communication going on in him between the lower and the higher. And as a result, within him, like a moon, the moon when it first appears in the month, it's just a thin little crescent, no? And it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. We call this a waxing moon. The moon is growing, then it is waning. So the glory of the integer, the wholeness of his soul, grows like a moon growing to the full. You want to ask something?
Yes. I would like to know when Shraddhavan with Ashwapati, has this experience, is it something that his soul is experiencing, or is it an impersonal?
Sorry?
Is it personal, or is it an impersonal movement? These oscillations and these, as you say, the vertical movement.
Well, Sri Aurobindo says actually these two things always go together. He says the personal and the impersonal are like the two wings of our ascent. We are always both. No, there's the personal, the individualized, but that is connected with something universal. But I think what is being described here is something, this is an individual experience. That's why Sri Aurobindo speaks about the integer of his soul. This is the growth of the inner being, which Sri Aurobindo tells us is essential for our progress. But perhaps some of those higher states that he comes in contact with, these are impersonal, much vaster. There were two lines I didn't explain. For into ignorant nature's gusty field. That's our world, no? The world of the ignorant nature, which is blown this way and that way by powerful winds. No? We can't keep on track. We're always being blown this way or that way. No? Into this half-ordered chaos of mortal life. There is some order, but it's still a chaos. This mortal life of ours. So into this, that formless power and that self of eternal light, they follow when the spirit descends back to the ordinary consciousness, those higher powers come with it. And that brings about gradually the growing of the soul and the transformation of all the levels of the being.
Shraddhavan, I have maybe stupid question about in this oscillation between earth and Himmel. Why always? Why
Sorry?
it's not connected? Earth and Himmel. One is the spirit.
Well, of course, they are connected, but still they are poles of experience, no? The material world, the earth, and the levels of higher consciousness. And the spirit is rising up into those levels of higher consciousness. Then this dull gravitation drags it down back into the material world. So there's an up and down, but the Supreme Diplomat is using that oscillation so that the higher powers descend into the lower powers till they too feel the need and will to change. This is why it is worthwhile making that effort to contact the higher levels of our being, even though we come back to normal afterwards. But something is helping the inner being to grow this.
Also,
The twin power, the duality is forever one. I think, this is what I think, that this refers to the consciousness force of the Supreme. It's chittapas. It has two aspects, twin aspects that go always together. They're always one consciousness force. I think we'll stop there for today. An aspect of the unknown reality altered the meaning of the cosmic scene. This huge material universe became a small result of a stupendous force. Overtaking the moment, the eternal ray illumined that which never yet was made. Thought lay down in a mighty voicelessness. The toiling thinker widened and grew still. Wisdom transcendent touched his quivering heart. His soul could sail beyond thought's luminous bar. Mind screened no more the shoreless infinite. Across a void retreating sky he glimpsed through a last glimmer and drift of vanishing stars the superconscient realms of motionless peace, where judgment ceases and the word is mute, and the unconceived lies pathless and alone. There came not form or any mounting voice. There only were silence and the Absolute. Out of that stillness, mind newborn arose, and woke to truths once inexpressible, and forms appeared dumbly significant, a seeing thought, a self-revealing voice. He knew the source from which his spirit came. Movement was married to the immobile vast. He plunged his roots into the infinite. He based his life upon eternity. Only a while at first these heavenlier states, these large, wide, poised upliftings could endure. The high and luminous tension breaks too soon, the body's stone stillness and the life's hushed trance, the breathless might and calm of silent mind. Or slowly they fail as sets a golden day. The restless nether members tire of peace, a nostalgia of old little works and joys, a need to call back small familiar selves, to tread the accustomed and inferior way, the need to rest in a natural pose of fall. As a child who learns to walk can walk not long, replace the Titan will forever to climb. On the heart's altar dim the sacred fire. An old pull of subconscious chords renews. It draws the unwilling spirit from the heights, or a dull gravitation drags us down to the blind, driven inertia of our base. This, too, the supreme diplomat can use. He makes our fall a means for greater rise. For into ignorant nature's gusty field, into the half-ordered chaos of mortal life, the formless power, the self of eternal light, follow in the shadow of the Spirit's descent. The twin duality, forever one, chooses its home mid the tumults of the sense. He comes unseen into our darker paths, and curtained by the darkness does his work, a subtle and all-knowing guest and guide, till they too feel the need and will to change. All here must learn to obey a higher law. Our body's cells must hold the immortal's flame. Else would the spirit reach alone its source, leaving a half-saved world to its dubious fate. Nature would ever labor unredeemed. Our earth would ever spin unhelped in space, and this immense creation's purpose fail, till at last the frustrate universe sank undone. Even his godlike strength to rise must fall. His greater consciousness withdrew behind. Dim and eclipsed, his human outside strove to feel again the old sublimities, bring the high saving touch, the ethereal flame, call back to its dire need the divine force. Always the power poured back like sudden rain, or slowly in his breast a presence grew. It clambered back to some remembered height, or soared above the peak from which it fell. Each time he rose, there was a larger poise, a dwelling on a higher spirit plane. The light remained in him a longer space. In this oscillation between earth and heaven, in this ineffable communion's climb, there grew in him, as grows a waxing moon, the glory of the integer of his soul.